You ever have that moment when your whole perception of a place flips upside down? Imagine this. You're standing on a rooftop in Isfahan. The air is warm, the sky burns orange as the sun sets, and all around you are domes and minarets carved with patterns so precise it feels like math turned into poetry. This city, older than London, older than Paris, is quietly rewriting everything you thought you knew. This isn't the Iran you've seen on the evening news. It's not just politics, protests, or headlines. It's the Iran of ancient Persia, of poets and empires, of deserts and ice houses, of architecture so intricate it seems impossible. It's a place where engineers built homes into cliffs thousands of years ago, and where people still live in them today. A land so extreme that NASA tests Mars equipment here, but also a land so tender that its gardens were designed to reflect paradise itself. And maybe, just maybe, this is the most misunderstood country on Earth. Because sometimes the most beautiful places are the ones we're told not to look at. From the stone-carved dreams of ancient kings, we descend toward the sea, into a very different kind of power. The Persian Gulf may look small on the map, but beneath its surface lies the heartbeat of the modern world. This narrow stretch of water holds nearly 60% of the world's proven oil reserves, and nearly a third of its natural gas. More than just geography, it's leverage, and Iran sits at its throat. At the center of it all is the Strait of Hormuz, just 21 miles wide. Every single day, over 21 million barrels of oil pass through this narrow bottleneck, fueling cities in China, India, Japan, South Korea, and beyond. One disruption, one threat, one spark, and global markets quake. But this isn't just a shipping route, it's also stunning. Take Qeshm Island, for example, a rugged paradise at the mouth of the strait. Its Valley of Stars looks like it belongs on another planet, sculpted by wind into alien spires and caverns. The island's Hara mangrove forests rise out of salty waters like floating green lungs, the only ecosystem of their kind in the Persian Gulf. In the Qapu Canyon, wind-carved corridors funnel cool air through sunburnt stone, creating a kind of natural air conditioning. And along these shores, hawksbill sea turtles return year after year, tracing ancient migration routes that long predate the oil tankers now cutting across the same waters. Here, nature and geopolitics overlap. Pearl divers once swam where warships now patrol. Spice traders once sailed routes now ruled by sanctions. And Iran? It remains what it has always been, a crossroads the world cannot afford to ignore. At first glance, the Strait of Hormuz seems simple, just water between two coastlines. But look closer, and you'll see one of the most consequential choke points on Earth. Only 21 miles wide at its narrowest, but in that sliver of sea flows nearly a quarter of all seaborne oil. Every tanker, every shipment, every drop that powers the global economy must pass through this narrow corridor between Iran and Oman. There's no detour, no plan B. That's why the United Nations has established formal traffic lanes, just 2 miles wide in each direction, like painted lines on a highway that floats. In these waters, one wrong move doesn't just risk collision, it could tip markets, spark conflicts, or alter alliances overnight. And yet, right here, where global tension simmers beneath every wave, nature thrives. Qeshm Island stretches along the Iranian coast like a jagged blade of earth. But within its harsh terrain lies wonder. Its Valley of Stars, carved by millennia of wind and rain, feels like walking through a fossilized dream. The Qapu Canyon channels wind like a living lung, cooling the air naturally as it weaves through sandstone walls. And in the tidal mangrove forests, flamingos wade in silence while hawksbill sea turtles crawl ashore to nest. Everywhere, contradictions. High-tech oil terminals stand just miles from ancient fishing villages. Warships drift past sea caves. Global headlines intersect with bird migrations. This isn't just a place, it's a pressure point, where geography becomes geopolitics, and every ripple in the water echoes far beyond Iran's borders. Because here, in the Strait of Hormuz, the planet's most vital resource moves through one of its most fragile corridors, and Iran controls the tap. Tehran isn't just a capital city. It's a collision of time, of culture, of everything Iran has ever been and is still becoming. Stretching across a vast valley framed by the snow-capped Alborz Mountains, Tehran is home to more than 12 million people. It's chaotic, alive, and utterly contradictory. Here, ancient poetry is recited in traffic jams. The call to prayer echoes over neon lights and honking horns. You'll pass women in designer sunglasses and full hijabs, street art painted beside centuries-old mosques, and tech startups operating behind traditional wooden doors. It's a place caught between two worlds, the sacred and the secular, the ancient and the ultra-modern. One foot rooted in empire, the other racing toward the future. Tehran doesn't try to resolve these contradictions. It lives with them. It breathes them in. And in doing so, it becomes something uniquely Iranian. Not either or, but both. Always. Rising from Tehran's skyline are two towers, very different in design, yet both monuments to the dreams of a nation. The first, Azadi Tower, looks like a white flame frozen in time. Built in 1971 to mark 2,500 years of Persian monarchy, its sweeping arches blend ancient Persian design with modernist ambition. After the 1979 revolution, it was renamed Freedom Tower, but the stone stayed the same. And that contradiction between name and origin, past and present, is exactly what makes it so powerful. Just miles away, Milad Tower stabs the sky like a needle of glass and steel. One of the tallest towers in Asia, it's a symbol of modern Iran, broadcasting signals, withstanding earthquakes, and standing defiantly in a city built on fault lines, both geological and political. Where Azadi whispers of history and identity, Milad roars of progress and resilience. Together, they're more than landmarks. They're metaphors, one reaching back, the other reaching forward. And Tehran stands right between them, balancing memory with momentum. Step into Golestan Palace, and it feels like history cracked open to reveal its glittering heart. Once home to the Qajar kings, this palace is where East met West, not in battle, but in beauty. Picture French crystal chandeliers dangling over Persian tilework, velvet European chairs placed beside hand-woven carpets, and a throne room that sparkles like a jewel box, each mirrored surface catching the light like fragments of a dream. It's not just decoration, it's diplomacy in architecture. A declaration that Persia could absorb the world and still remain itself. But step outside the palace walls, and you're dropped into another world entirely, the Grand Bazaar. Here, history isn't framed and silent, it's alive. The air swirls with the scent of saffron, cardamom, and rosewater, the clanging of copper, the calls of merchants, the soft shuffle of generations under vaulted ceilings. It all blends into a rhythm older than most nations. Smartphones sit beside spices, silk next to satellite dishes. This is no museum. It's commerce as culture, and culture as continuity. Because in Iran, the past isn't behind glass. It's folded into the present, sold by the gram, stitched into every rug and spoken in every dialect. Looming in the distance, above the haze and the high-rises, stands a mountain that doesn't just dominate the skyline, it dominates the soul of a nation. Mount Damavand isn't just Iran's tallest peak. At over 18,000 feet, it's a sleeping volcano, a myth wrapped in snow, watching silently over Tehran like an ancient guardian. To geologists, it's a stratovolcano. To Persians, it's a legend. In mythology, this is where the dragon Azadi was chained for eternity, held captive beneath ice and stone until the end of time. And when you see it on a clear day, its summit glowing gold in the morning light, it's not hard to believe the stories. For the people of Tehran, Damavand is more than a backdrop. It's a compass, a reminder, a symbol that no matter how chaotic the city becomes, something bigger, older, and unshakable is always there. Skyscrapers may rise, governments may change, but Damavand doesn't flinch. It just stands and watches. Iran doesn't sit on the edge of the world. It is the center of it. For thousands of years, this land was the place where civilizations collided. To the west, Rome and the Ottomans. To the east, the Silk Road stretching toward China. To the north, nomadic empires thundered down from the steppes. And to the south, the warm waters of the Persian Gulf carried spices, silk, and secrets to India and beyond. This wasn't just a crossroads of trade. It was a crossroads of ideas, inventions, and identity. Languages blended, religions evolved, empires rose and fell, but Iran endured, absorbing pieces of every traveler and conqueror that passed through. It's no wonder then that the stories here feel deeper, more layered, like ancient tapestries woven not just with color, but with conflict and cooperation, war and wonder. Iran isn't a relic. It's a living archive of everything that ever mattered along the fault lines of history. They used to say, Isfahan is half the world. Stand in the middle of Naqsh-e Square and you'll understand why. This isn't just a public square. It's a stage, an empire's dream carved in stone and tile, echoing with the footsteps of kings, scholars, and poets. Built in the early 1600s, when much of Europe still stumbled through muddy alleys, Isfahan was already reaching for the divine. At its heart stands the Shah Mosque, a prayer written in turquoise and gold, its dome glowing like ember at sunset, silver at dawn. Every line, every pattern, calculated to perfection. Geometry made sacred, a place where even silence feels spiritual. Turn east and the Sheikh Lotfola Mosque reveals something more intimate. No minarets, no courtyards, built not for crowds but for contemplation. Its colors shift as you move, from ivory to rose to honeyed gold. The entire structure feels alive, as if breathing with you. And then there's the Jameh Mosque, a living textbook of Persian architecture. 8 centuries of dynasties layered one over another, brick from the Seljuks, tiles from the Mongols, domes from the Safavids. Walk its halls and you're walking through time. The Ali Qapu Palace rises across the square, its music room carved with niches that catch and shape sound. From its terrace, kings once watched polo games played in the square below. Yes, polo, because here, even sport was a spectacle. And when day fades, the city's bridges come alive. Most famous is Persepolis, the bridge of 33 arches. It doesn't just cross water, it sings across it. Each arch reflected perfectly in the river below, forming circles of light and shadow like poetry written in reflection. Isfahan isn't just architecture, it's aspiration turned physical. A civilization at its peak, daring to make beauty feel eternal. While most cities might have one grand mosque, Isfahan holds an entire encyclopedia of Islamic architecture within a single complex. The Jameh Mosque isn't just a building, it's a timeline made of brick and tile. Over 800 years of Persian design, layered like pages in a sacred manuscript. Step inside, and you're walking through dynasties, the austerity of early Islam, the intricate flourishes of Mongol influence, the confident domes of the Safavids. Each edition didn't erase the past, it honored it. A dome built beside an arch, not over it. A new prayer hall that echoes the one before. It's a kind of architectural dialogue, dynasties speaking to one another across time. And then there's the Ali Qapu Palace, watching over Naqsh-e Jahan Square like a silent conductor. Its 6 stories climb above the city, but it's the music room at the top that steals your breath. Carved niches in the shape of vases and instruments don't just decorate the walls, they shape the sound. Voices bounce, linger, resonate. Even a whisper turns into music. From the balcony, Safavid kings once watched polo matches and royal processions. But what they built wasn't just a viewing deck, it was a vision. A place to see and to be seen. A reminder that empire wasn't just about territory, it was about aesthetics, about making power beautiful. If Tehran is where Iran wrestles with modern life, then Kashan is where it perfected the art of simply living. This isn't a city of empires or grand conquests. It's a city of quiet mastery, where architecture whispers rather than shouts, and every home feels like it was built not just to impress, but to breathe. Step inside the historic houses of Tabatabai or Burujerdi, and the world outside vanishes. These aren't palaces, yet they feel like sanctuaries, designed by merchants who understood that real luxury isn't about scale, it's about proportion, light, wind, space. A courtyard that cools itself, a fountain that calms the soul. In Kashan, elegance serves comfort, not ego. Then there's Fin Garden, a vision of paradise trimmed into geometry. Built in the 16th century, it follows the ancient Chahar Bagh design. 4 water channels flowing from a central fountain, mirroring the 4 rivers of heaven. Shade, water, symmetry. It's not just a garden, it's theology in landscape form. And beneath the earth, a surprise. The Sultan Amir Ahmad bathhouse. A world of domed ceilings, star-shaped skylights, and warm pools carved into silence. Here, bathing becomes ritual, cleansing not just the body, but the spirit. In Kashan, paradise isn't a reward after death. It's something you build, here, now, with mud, stone, and intention. On the edge of 2 brutal deserts, where rainfall is a rumor and the sun spares no mercy, sits a city that simply should not exist. But Yazd doesn't just exist, it thrives. For over 3,000 years, people here have carved out life in a landscape designed to erase it. And how they did it is nothing short of genius. Above the rooftops rise the tall, slender towers of bajgirs, wind catchers, ancient air conditioning built long before electricity. These structures grab even the faintest desert breeze, funneling it downward to cool the rooms below. No fans, no wires, just gravity and airflow. Beneath the city, qanats, underground water channels, snake for miles through the sand, quietly delivering meltwater from distant mountains. Dug by hand, generation after generation, their lifelines flowing invisibly beneath the heat. The buildings themselves are made of clay and adobe, their thick walls holding onto the cool of night to fight off the scorching day. Walk through Yazd's alleyways and the city feels like it's grown straight from the earth, tan, sun-baked, blending into the horizon like it was always meant to be there. And when night falls, something magical happens. The walls glow orange under the stars, lanterns flicker in silence. And this desert city, this impossible triumph of human resilience, becomes a constellation of survival, shining quietly in the dark. In Yazd, architecture isn't just beauty, it's adaptation, it's defiance. It's the story of how humans learned to dance with the desert instead of fighting it. To understand Yazd fully, you have to look beyond its bricks and winged towers into the flame that still burns at its spiritual core. This is the heartland of Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest monotheistic religions. Long before Christianity or Islam, Zoroastrians believed in the battle between light and darkness, truth and lies, and in a god called Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord. In a modest temple in Yazd, a flame has been burning for over 1,500 years. Tended day and night by generations of firekeepers, it's not just a ritual, it's a symbol, a living thread connecting today's believers with ancient Persia's soul. But fire wasn't only for worship, it was also sacred in death. Just outside the city, 2 stone hills rise like forgotten monuments, the Towers of Silence. For centuries, this is where Zoroastrians brought their dead, not to bury, not to burn, but to offer back to nature. In their belief, earth and fire must remain pure. So the bodies were laid atop these towers, exposed to the sun and the sky, and to the vultures. Flesh returned to the cycle, bone to wind, spirit to judgment. It's haunting and strangely beautiful, a faith rooted in respect for the elements, for the balance of life and death, and for the flame that endures through it all. Because in Yazd, nothing is wasted. Not wind, not water, not even death. Leave Yazd behind, and the land begins to stretch. Wider, hotter, stranger. Soon you arrive at Dasht-e, the Lut Desert, one of the most hostile places on Earth. A place where even time seems to evaporate in the heat. NASA once measured surface temperatures here at over 159 degrees Fahrenheit, 70 degrees Celsius. Hot enough to fry flesh, melt memory, and turn rocks to dust. No permanent life survives, no water flows, no shade comforts. And yet, it's stunning. Winds have sculpted the landscape into kaluts, towering rock formations that rise from the sand like alien cathedrals. They stretch endlessly, like the ruins of a civilization not yet discovered. Salt flats shimmer like glass. Dunes ripple like frozen waves. Every mile feels like stepping deeper into another planet. But this isn't Mars, it's Iran. And this desert, as empty as it may seem, tells you everything about the people who live nearby. Because to survive this, you have to be more than tough. You have to be ingenious, visionary, unafraid to build where logic says not to. The Dasht-e doesn't offer mercy, but it does offer perspective. That the beauty of this country isn't just found in its mosques or poetry, it's found in its extremes, in the brutal, burning edge of what it means to endure. After the silence of the desert, Shiraz feels like a sigh of relief. This is where Iran softens, where stone gives way to gardens and survival gives way to song. For over 1,000 years, Shiraz has been the emotional heart of Persian culture, the city where poetry isn't just art, it's oxygen. Walk its streets, and names like Hafez and Sadi aren't just literary icons, they're living companions. Their verses are etched into tiles, whispered in tea houses, scribbled into love letters. Here, people don't just quote poetry, they consult it, like scripture. And nowhere captures Shiraz's soul quite like the Nasir al-Mulk Mosque, better known as the Pink Mosque. At first glance, it's beautiful, but step inside at sunrise, and it becomes unreal. As the sun climbs, its rays filter through stained glass windows, scattering kaleidoscopes of ruby, sapphire, emerald, and gold across Persian carpets and marble columns. The walls don't just reflect color, they breathe it. It's not decoration, it's theology in light. The 99 names of God dance on the floor. Worshippers kneel beneath rainbows. And for one brief moment, the material world seems to slip, revealing something sacred underneath. This is Shiraz, a city that turns faith into beauty, that turns pain into poetry, and reminds you that sometimes the most powerful architecture isn't built with stone, but with light and longing. In Shiraz, the divine doesn't shout. It glows, it rhymes, it sings. We return once more to the Nasir al-Mulk Mosque, already shimmering with color. But to truly understand it, you have to feel it in motion. As the morning sun rises, its light filters through stained glass, ruby reds, ocean blues, golden ambers, cascading across the floor like spilled jewels. It's not just a place of worship, it's a living prayer made of light. Here, faith becomes something visual, something that shifts with each passing second. One moment you're wrapped in violet, the next emerald. And all the while, God's 99 names unfold quietly beneath your feet. But if Nasir al-Mulk speaks through color, then Hafiz speaks through words. Just a short walk away in a peaceful garden shaded by cypress trees lies the tomb of Hafiz, Persia's most beloved poet. More than a grave, it's a sanctuary. People don't just visit, they consult him. They come with questions about love, fate, grief, and open his book at random, believing the poem they land on holds their answer. And somehow, it always does. Teenagers on dates, grandmothers in headscarves, travelers from across the world, all gathered around a marble tomb, whispering verse into the wind. Because in Iran, poetry is not a luxury. It's a lifeline, a mirror, a guide. And here in Shiraz, it's everywhere, from the glass that bends light into color to the page that bends language into truth. Leave behind the softness of Shiraz and follow the wind east until the land suddenly opens, revealing ruins so vast, so deliberate, they don't just tell history, they command it. This is Persepolis, not just a city, but the ceremonial heart of the Achaemenid Empire, built by Darius the Great over 2,500 years ago. An empire that stretched from Greece to India, Egypt to Central Asia, the largest the world had ever seen. And yet, these ruins don't scream conquest. They whisper something else. Unity through dignity. Carved into the great staircase of the Apadana Palace are stone reliefs, not of enemies bowing in defeat, but of delegates from every corner of the empire. Egyptians with ivory, Scythians with horses, Indians with exotic beasts, each one in their native dress, each one proud, honored, welcomed. It's diplomacy in stone, a vision of empire not based on crushing difference, but celebrating it. Today, the columns rise like petrified forests. Some still wear scars, burn marks from the night Alexander the Great set Persepolis ablaze. Whether it was vengeance or drunken fury, history doesn't agree. But the fire ended more than a city. It closed a chapter of Persian greatness. And yet, something remained. Because Persepolis was more than buildings. It was an idea that greatness doesn't mean uniformity, that you can build a world that holds many cultures, many gods, many tongues, and still call it one. Stand among the ruins at sunset as the stones turn gold and shadows stretch long, and you'll feel it too. Not just the weight of empire, but the echo of a dream the world still hasn't outgrown. Just a few miles from the fallen glory of Persepolis, the mountains rise again, this time not to hold palaces, but to cradle the dead. Here lies Naqsh-e an ancient cliff face carved with cross-shaped tombs that pierce the rock like doors into another world. Each one holds the remains of Persian kings, Darius the Great, Xerxes, and their successors, entombed not in gold, but in granite. Not underground, but above the earth, watching over the empire they once ruled. The facades are grand, columns, staircases, carvings, but it's the symbolism that lingers. Each tomb shows the king standing on a platform, held aloft by figures representing the peoples of the empire. Egyptians, Babylonians, Medes, Elamites, dozens of nations sculpted into the stone, holding up their king. It's not a message of dominance, it's a statement of shared strength. Even in death, these kings envisioned themselves as guardians, not just of Persia, but of unity. Below the tombs, massive rock reliefs tell other stories. Battles, coronations, divine blessings, etched into the cliffs like eternal memory. And across the face of this sacred wall, time has added its own layers: wind, rain, revolution, and reverence. Here, silence speaks. The kind of silence that feels heavy with meaning, like standing inside a paused heartbeat of history. Because at Naqsh-e the stones don't just bury the dead, they remember them. They remind us that empires may fall, but the idea of them, that fragile dream of unity and dignity, can outlive the dust. Not far from these tombs carved in stone lies a vision carved into history, one that feels shockingly modern even now. It began with Cyrus the Great, the founder of the Achaemenid Empire. His rule stretched across continents, but his true legacy wasn't measured in land. It was written on a small clay cylinder, barely the size of a loaf of bread. The Cyrus Cylinder. Often called the world's first declaration of human rights, it proclaimed something radical for its time: that people should be free to worship their own gods, to speak their own languages, to live by their own customs. This wasn't empire by erasure, it was empire by inclusion. While other rulers demanded obedience through fire and sword, Cyrus imagined something different: a world held together not by force, but by respect, not by sameness, but by shared purpose. And as you walk among the ruins of Persepolis, as you stand before the tombs of kings who followed his path, that idea begins to settle in your bones. That true power isn't in flattening difference, it's in protecting it. That strength isn't in forcing one identity, but in honoring many. In a world still struggling to reconcile diversity with unity, Cyrus's vision whispers from the dust: it's possible. Head north, where the Iranian plateau begins to rise, where empires once collided and caravans whispered across the mountains, and you'll find Tabriz. Set at the crossroads of Iran, Turkey, and Azerbaijan, this city has always been more than just a stop on the map. It was once a capital, a marketplace of empires, a cultural intersection where languages blended and ideas flowed as freely as silk and spice. For centuries, Tabriz was a beating heart of the Silk Road, a place where traders from China, India, Rome, and the Caucasus gathered to exchange not just goods, but knowledge. Philosophers and merchants, poets and kings, all passed through these stone streets. And yet, for all its history, Tabriz still feels like a hidden gem. Its crown jewel, the Blue Mosque, built in the 15th century, was once covered entirely in brilliant turquoise tile work. Earthquakes shattered much of its facade, but fragments remain, gleaming like stardust on worn stone.
Standing beneath its cracked dome, you can almost hear the voices of those who once prayed here, and those who rebuilt it again and again. But Tabriz's beauty isn't limited to mosques or markets. Just beyond the city lies Kandovan, a village unlike any other. Homes carved directly into volcanic rock, like something out of a fantasy film. Stone cones rise from the earth like petrified flames, and people live inside them. Chimneys peek out from lava-formed spires, windows cut into ancient ash. These aren't relics, they're residences. Families cook, sleep, and raise children inside formations shaped by prehistoric eruptions. It's a place where geology and humanity have merged, where shelter is born not from bricks, but from patience, stone, and inherited knowledge. In Tabriz, survival isn't just a necessity, it's artistry. And in a world that often forgets the quiet places between empires, this ancient city still stands, watchful, weathered, and wonderfully alive.
Hidden in the shadow of the mountains, nestled against the wind-carved cliffs of northwest Iran, lies a village that looks like it belongs on another planet. This is Kandovan, a settlement not built but hollowed from the bones of the earth. Here, people have carved their homes directly into volcanic rock, shaped by ancient eruptions and sculpted by time into cone-shaped spires. These aren't ruins. They're not museums. They're living spaces, warm, smoke-scented, full of family life. Windows peek out from lava formations. Goat paths weave between stone towers, and chimneys curl smoke into the crisp mountain air. Some of these homes are over 700 years old, passed down like heirlooms, refined with each generation. No two are the same, yet all seem to grow organically from the stone, as if the mountain itself had decided to host life. It's easy to compare Kandovan to places like Cappadocia in Turkey, or the cave dwellings of Petra. But here, there's no tourist theme park, no staged authenticity. What you find instead is resilience. Families who've learned to coexist with the landscape rather than conquer it. Because when winter brings snow that chokes the roads and summer heat scorches the plains, the stone walls insulate like a natural fortress. Kandovan isn't a relic of the past. It's a reminder that sometimes the oldest ways of living are also the wisest. A village shaped by fire and preserved by the quiet determination of those who call it home. Travel farther north, and Iran shifts again. Its deserts giving way to water, its cliffs to forest, its silence to birdsong. Once, Lake Urmia was among the largest salt lakes on Earth. Locals called it the turquoise solitaire of Azerbaijan, a shimmering inland sea that stretched so wide it looked like it could swallow the horizon. But today, much of that water is gone. Climate change, upstream dams, and agricultural overuse have drained its body and exposed its bones. Where waves once rolled, there's now cracked salt flats and ghost piers reaching out into nothing. And yet, even in retreat, the lake holds a strange beauty. The remaining water glows pink, colored by salt-loving algae that thrive where little else can. When the wind is still, the lake reflects the sky like a mirror, painting a portrait of a paradise slowly slipping away. But just east of here, a miracle remains. The Caspian Hyrcanian forests, one of the world's oldest ecosystems, drape the slopes between Iran and the Caspian Sea like a green velvet curtain. These temperate rainforests are remnants of the Ice Age, home to Persian leopards, brown bears, and trees that have stood for over 2,000 years. Step into them and it's like walking backward through time. The air is thick with moss and memory. Every leaf whispers survival. This forest once sheltered the now extinct Caspian tiger. Its rivers once carried silk and stories to the sea. And today, it still fights, quietly, stubbornly,
to outlive the machines and fires that press at its borders. From a dying salt lake to an ancient living forest, northern Iran reminds us beauty can endure, but it can also vanish. And when it does, it leaves behind more than silence. It leaves behind a question. Were we paying attention?
In the lush hills of northern Iran, where mist clings to treetops and clouds brush the rooftops, there's a village that seems to grow with the mountain, not against it. This is Mosul, a village so steep, so ingeniously built, that the roof of one house becomes the front yard of another. Here there are no cars, no traffic lights, just winding stone paths, moss-covered steps, and centuries-old homes clinging to the slope like they've always belonged. In Mosul, the mountain isn't a challenge to overcome, it's a partner. The architecture follows the terrain, not the other way around, and that quiet humility has created something rare, a place that feels both human and wild, both fragile and eternal. Above the village, deep in the forested peaks, rises a fortress lost in the trees, Rud Khan Castle. You won't find it by accident. To reach it, you climb over 1,000 mossy steps through misty switchbacks and thick canopy. And then, like a secret revealed, you see it. Stone walls stretch across the ridgeline like the spine of some ancient beast. Towers punch through the treetops, and inside, silence. This 10th century fortress once guarded the region against invaders. Now, it guards something else. A memory of a time when we didn't just conquer the land, we listened to it, built with it, adapted. At Mosul and Rud Khan, there are no sharp lines between nature and architecture. Everything flows together: stone, wood, fog, footsteps. It's not about dominance, it's about coexistence. And in today's world, that might be the most radical form of strength. In the deserts of southeastern Iran, where the heat warps the horizon and the wind carries whispers of empires past, a fortress rises from the sand like a mirage made solid. This is Arg-e Bam, the largest adobe structure in the world. Built entirely of mud brick, straw, and palm trunks, Bam was once a vital stop on the Silk Road. At its peak, it held over 13,000 people, protected behind massive walls and a towering 38-meter citadel. It wasn't just a military stronghold, it was a city, carved from the earth itself. But in 2003, everything changed. A devastating earthquake struck without warning. In just 12 seconds, most of the citadel and over 26,000 lives were lost. The damage was almost impossible to process, entire blocks reduced to dust. A masterpiece that had endured for 2 millennia, gone in less than a minute. And yet, Iran didn't let Bam disappear. In the years that followed, a painstaking effort began. Brick by brick, using traditional techniques, local artisans and international teams set about the impossible, to rebuild not just a monument, but an identity. Today, parts of Arg-e Bam stand once more. The citadel casts shadows again. The walls rise, scarred but strong. And in their quiet presence lies a message far more powerful than stone. That what defines a civilization is not what it loses, but how it responds. Persistence over perfection, memory over rubble, rebirth over ruin. In Bam, Iran shows us that even in a landscape of dust and death, something beautiful can begin again. To understand Iran today, you can't just look at its ancient past. You have to pass through the tremor that changed everything. 1979. The Islamic Revolution didn't come gradually. It came like a storm. For decades, Iran under the Shah had been racing toward Western modernity, fast cars, high fashion, glitzy nightlife. In Tehran, women wore miniskirts, pop music blared from cafes, skyscrapers stretched toward the future. But beneath that surface, discontent was growing. Political repression, economic disparity, a sense of cultural whiplash. And then, it broke. Millions took to the streets. The monarchy collapsed, and overnight, a new regime was born, the Islamic Republic. Mosques replaced nightclubs, headscarves replaced high heels. Secular law gave way to religious authority. To many it was liberation, to others it was loss. Women gained access to universities in unprecedented numbers, but lost the right to choose what they wore. Iran became more self-reliant, but increasingly isolated from the world. It wasn't just a regime change, it was an identity shift, one that still reverberates through every part of Iranian life. And here's the thing, that moment, those 45 years since the revolution, make up less than 1% of Iran's history. But for much of the world, it's the only lens through which they see this country. And that is the true tragedy. Because when we let one era define 7,000 years, we don't just lose perspective, we lose possibility. For most of the world, Iran is frozen in a single frame. A revolution, a regime, a headline. But that narrow view flattens a civilization that was already ancient when Rome was still learning how to build roads. We've walked through cities carved into cliffs where families still live. We've stood beneath domes so perfect they whisper math into prayer. We've seen wind catchers cool homes without a single wire, and gardens that mimic paradise. This is a country that learned how to make ice in the middle of the desert, while much of the world was still figuring out how to plant grain. A place that wrote poetry while others wrote war, that engineered sustainability long before the word existed, that honored diversity before tolerance became a buzzword. Yes, the past 45 years have shaped modern Iran, but they haven't defined it. Because Iran doesn't fit into neat narratives. It predates them. It existed before our politics, and it will exist after our assumptions crumble. To know Iran is to see contrast, not contradiction. Pride and protest, faith and freedom, beauty and brutality, all living side by side like light through stained glass. And maybe that's the point. Some countries demand to be understood. Iran dares you to look deeper. We've traveled through 7,000 years of human brilliance, through fire temples and palaces, through deserts that breathe and forests that remember. And after all of it, Iran still resists easy explanation. It's not a headline, it's not a regime, it's not a problem to be solved or a mystery to be unraveled. Iran is a civilization. Its geometry carved into mosques, verses whispered through centuries, and mud brick cities rebuilt after disaster. It's a grandmother quoting Hafez in the same breath as a protest chant. It's the silence of Persepolis at sunset and the roar of motorbikes in Tehran the next morning. It's contradiction, but never chaos. Complexity, but never confusion. Because in Iran, identity is layered, like its architecture, its poetry, its history. Every empire left something behind. And the people? They turned it into art. So the next time someone tries to reduce Iran to a soundbite, remember the wind catchers. Remember the colors inside the pink mosque. Remember the mountain that watches a city change beneath it and never moves. Because Iran doesn't ask you to understand it in one sitting. It asks you to listen, to look closer, to hold the questions longer. And if you do, you'll find a place that refuses to be simplified, because it was never meant to be.